If you didn't know how to use the Sephiroth, you might have been shot dead, I said. Or I might not have, Gurion. There were 3 of us there, plus the girl. Would the gunman have shot all of us? Would he have shot even one of us? Knowing that he would then have to shoot all of us? It is unlikely. You don't know that, I said. I said, the potential. Our neighbors don't like me, Gurion. They wish me ill. They vandalize our home because I defend the rights of those they despise. Yet they know I'm human and a father. And so they know that the surest way to harm me would be to harm you. Potentially, one of them will go crazy, like that boy who shot Rabin in Israel. Potentially, one of them could go crazy and try to harm you. Should I kill them all to prevent it? Would you suggest I do that? Because I would not do that. It is dangerous to exist in the world. To exist is to be threatened. We must live with threats. I said, that contradicts everything you said before about the protection from sneak attacks. And a loaded gun that's pointed at you by a criminal is far more threatening than a gun in a store that might get bought and loaded and walked over to your house and used on your son, and you know it. I said, if the danger wasn't real, you would not have done what you did. How can you know so much, said my father, and hear so much and speak so pristinely, and meanwhile be so completely muddled, boychical? How is it that your loyalty enables you to justify everything your father does, but you go deaf when he's speaking to you? I am telling you that what I did was wrong, and you have to trust that I am correct, if for no other reason than I am your father and you are to honor me. And to honor me, I am telling you, you have to be a mensch. You do not need to prove to me that you are a good son. I believe it, Gurion, you are a good son. And I am glad that you are being a good son, but a good son is not necessarily a good human being. A good son is just a son who is loyal to his father. And loyalty is not in itself goodness. And a good father would never teach his son otherwise. I want you to understand that. If you want to honor me, you will allow that I was wrong to take that man's life. You will call it a mistake, and after accepting it as a mistake, you will forgive me my mistake, rather than claiming it a victory. You will love me despite my mistake. You will cease to be my apologist. And Gurion, I'm sorry. I thought we were talking. I'm sorry, Gurion. I got a little carried away. Come on. Why are you crying? Why are you crying on poor Michael Weinberg? There were a lot of reasons why I was crying. My father was angry with me. He was disappointed with me. He was worried with me. He used a Yiddish endearment. He believed he was a murderer. He kept trying to protect me from things I could protect myself from. And by calling me an apologist, he was calling me a bad scholar. Despite his perfect imperfections, despite his perfect intentions, despite his saying everything that he was saying out of love for me, he was wrong. And I was right. I was crying because he was not God and I was not Abraham. I was crying because I saw that to honor him, I would have to disobey him, and that to honor him would be to disobey him. And it is sad to learn that you have to disobey your favorite man. I let him squeeze and punch my arms and my shoulders while he delivered a light sing-song monologue about tears in the grass atop the grave of poor old Michael Weinberg, whether the water of the tears should grow the grass more than the salt of them would kill the grass, or the salt would be the victor. Whether the two would cancel each other out, and whether the salt content of the tears was negligible, and what, if anything, that might say about the power of the tears, whether the tears themselves might be negligible, and what asking that question might say about the fitness of the father asking it, whether or not the monologue was intentionally symbolic, or whether or not could be unintentionally symbolic while delivering a monologue. And if one could not be unintentionally symbolic, turning the page, Could one be intentionally but unknowingly symbolic? Can a man have intentions he doesn't know he has? And so on until I stopped crying. On the walk back to the forums, I gave my uneaten bagel to a homeless black guy on Western. The black guy was standing a couple of feet away from two homeless white guys. I didn't give the bagel to the white guys because I worried they were Jews, which meant, I reasoned, that the bagel would harm them. Then I felt dumb about it because the black guy might have been a Jew like me, even though it was statistically less likely. And then I felt even dumber because statistics were irrelevant, because even if a black guy was a Jew, he was starving, and Hashem should not have had a problem with me feeding a starving Jew chametz. He should, if anything, prefer that among the 3 starving men I would choose to feed the Jew, regardless of what I was feeding him. And if I was wrong, and that was not what he preferred, then he and I would already have had so many other problems I didn't even know about, that to spend time worrying about a bagel and whether or not some guy I gave it to was Jewish seemed pretty wasteful in the big scheme of things. So I stopped worrying. I held my dad's hand and let myself be tired. Although she favored a far less modest look, t-shirts and jeans or fatigue pants, if not tank tops and shorts or cotton dresses that quit above the knee. My mother, who never paid attention to weather forecasts, had, on the day before she was to meet my father's parents, bought for the occasion an ankle-length skirt of unbreathing fabric and a blouse that buttoned up to her chin and down to her wrists. This was springtime in Chicago, despite it having been wintry on the day she'd purchased the clothing. The temperature climbed 45 degrees over the ensuing 24 hours. My mom did own other slightly less formal, far less constricting items that she wore to the hospital, but those clothes were at her apartment in Hyde Park, whereas she was at my father's apartment on the other side of the city in Uptown. She had Fridays off and had spent Thursday night there, as had become her habit, and by the time it occurred to her that she would suffocate in the clothing she'd bought, she and my father had only half an hour to get to my grandparents' house. Even if she'd had enough money to buy a new outfit at a local thrift store, the only kind of store there was back then in Uptown that didn't sell liquor, candy bars, or used saxophones, there was just no time to do it. So she firmed up as originally planned, and over the course of the 2-mile walk to his parents' house, my dad, nervous himself, attempted to lighten the situation with one-liners that failed to hit till he came upon, "At least the material's too thick to schwitz through," at which point my mother, bent at the knees with gallows laughter, turned her head and saw that she had, in fact, schwitzed through the fabric that covered her left armpit, and began to cry. They got to my grandparents a few minutes early, only to find my grandmother behind schedule. In order to finish the cooking before sundown, she needed to help in the kitchen. "We're going to have to use the pressure cooker because we are under pressure. Do you know how to use the pressure cooker, honey?" "Yes," my mother said, dabbing a damp handkerchief behind her ears. "And how are you with the chicken?" my grandma said. "I fix a nice chicken," said my mother, the stutter the only evidence of the gasp she'd otherwise stifled upon realizing mid-sentence that the chicken she was committing to would be a kosher one. My grandma said, "You don't sound so sure." And my father, who did not yet know about the 6-day war chicken trauma, and who was still in the kitchen at the time, believed his mother had said so light-heartedly. My mother, on the other hand, was confident that "you don't sound so sure" equals, "Are you telling me that you expect my son to spend his life with a woman who balks at the thought of cooking a nice kosher chicken in a pressure cooker on Shabbat?" Equals, "Do you expect me to believe that you are presenting yourself honestly in that high-collared get-up when already a rash is forming on that delicate neck of yours?" Equals, "With your skin so dark, my skin sun so light, how can you even consider bringing my grandchildren into the world?" "I'm sure," my mom said. She was shown the vegetables and the knives, the spice rack and the pressure cooker. Then she was shown the chicken. "Will you poke it just to double check it's thawed?" said my grandmother. My mother, a soldier, a killer, poked the hairy chicken with the knuckles of her clenched fist and got to work. She prepped the chicken with the spices, pressure cooked the chicken with the vegetables, and set the chicken on the chicken dish when the chicken was finished cooking. By the time they all sat down to eat, she had performed so many compulsive eyelid checks that the small bit of mascara she applied that afternoon was smudged like war paint. "I looked like a harlot," she always tells me. "I tell him, Judah, I look like a cheap harlot." And of harlots, I know only what I've read in books and seen through the windshield on North Avenue, responds my father. "So a harlot, she says, boy chick. But if a harlot, the most expensive harlot in the history of man, and of that I can be sure for the one thing about which all the books agree, is that the less a harlot looks a harlot, the more a harlot costs." "You are such a sweet man," my mother says to him, "but so superstitious." He is so sweet and superstitious, Gurion, that in the cause of protecting me from the evil eye his mother was casting upon the schwitzing black harlot her son had brought to her Sabbath dinner table, he actually convinced himself that I looked as nice as I wished I did. I did not. "You looked gorgeous." He is crazy. However my mother looked, and whatever my paternal grandmother thought of her, this is where the short story of that Shabbat bends its knees for the leap into slapstick that it must make to remain true. It is at this point in their telling of the story that my father lights a cigarette to share with my mother, to pass back and forth with her like soldiers in a forest. The filter pinched between his thumb and forefinger, the cherry pointed down. Their cupped hands turned to shield orange light from the eyes of snipers who hide behind interior trees. It is at this point my parents lean toward me and fictionalize unabashedly, and I lean toward them and listen without questioning. And we get so involved that I sometimes take the cigarette from one of them and put it to my own lips before any of us become aware of what I am doing. This is the point at which we three conspire. We agree to act as if what's about to get said actually took place. Hardly any of it did, but the meaning of what my parents describe is truer than the meaning that would come across if they attempted to describe what actually happened. What actually happened was, I'm led to believe, most unlistenable, if not untellable. A series of uncomfortable glances cast in near silence. A few cutting remarks that echoed off the soup tureen, the damage of these remarks magnifying even as the decibels diminished. What actually happened, I am led to believe, was not funny at all. It was painful and dull. Yet, so would have been the life of the tramp in Chaplin's City Lights if the tramp were not fictional. So would have been the life of the blind girl the tramp loved if the girl were not fictional. So would have been the operation the tramp struggled to pay for, and the struggle to pay for it, were the operation and the struggle not fictional. And that operation never would have worked if it weren't fictional. And even if by some miracle it had, the tramp would have never been able to get the money for it. But in City Lights, the tramp does get the money. The operation does succeed, and everything eventually works out for the lovers. And all of it should be true, so in a way it is true. And they are worth crying for. A non-fictional tramp and the non-fictional blind girl he loves. In real life, such a doomed couple would deserve our tears. Yet, had Chaplin presented them as they would have been, had they not been fictionalized, we would turn away after 5 minutes instead of staying till the end and weeping as we should. I once asked my father, why do we go to the Symphony Hall once a year to see City Lights with orchestral accompaniment at $75 a head? Because it's the greatest movie ever made, he said. And what makes it the greatest? It is the truest, he told me. And why do we weep at the end of the movie? Why do we weep once we know that everything will be all right? We weep because the only way everything could be all right is in fiction. We weep because what we've seen can't be true, no matter how badly we wish it were. We weep at the truth. And so to go challenging the facts in this portion of the story, like some lawyer, some head shrinker, would be to act against faith, to act against truth, to dishonor my mother and father. To monkey with the slapstick would be to lie, and I will not lie. However, my mother's mascara might have made her appear at the dinner table. No one has ever argued over whether or not some dried chili peppers had been cooked into the nice kosher chicken. They had been. As for why they had been, there were two opposing claims. My parents. My mother had cooked chili peppers into the chicken in good faith for the sake of better flavor. My grandparents, however, my mother had cooked chili peppers into the chicken in bad faith for the sake of worse flavor. And why would my grandparents make such a claim? Why would they believe that my mother would want to make the chicken taste bad? Opinions vary. But she wasn't Le Bouffateur, my father says. Because they knew I was taking their son away, says my mother, and they thought I was out to destroy them. If she didn't ruin the chicken on purpose, my grandmother said to my father across from the shed table, then why won't she eat it anyway? She told you already, my father said. She doesn't like to eat chicken. What does that mean? Said my grandfather. She's a vegetarian? Are you a vegetarian, Tamar? And if you're a vegetarian, are you the kind of vegetarian who eats fish? I am not a vegetarian, my mother said, and I do eat chicken. You misunderstood. I don't eat kosher chicken. You're sitting at our dinner table telling us that not only do you eat treif, but you eat treif exclusively, said my grandmother. You're saying you refuse to eat that which isn't treif. I have a hard time understanding. I am not exclusive with treif, my mother said. She's not exclusive with treif, said my father. She's eating from every other dish at the table. Every other dish on the table is as kosher as the chicken. I'm sorry I interrupted you, Tamar. It's okay, my mom said. Is it because she's Ethiopian? Is it Ethiopian Jews? They don't eat kosher chicken, said my grandfather. If she doesn't eat it, said my grandmother, would she cook it? Why would she think she would know how to cook it and now the meat is ruined? I think it's delicious, my father said. Oh, Judah, it is not delicious, said my grandmother. I'm telling you, I think it is, my father said. It is not delicious, Judah, not remotely, said my grandfather. It is not remotely delicious, and you should stop eating it, or else your stomach will tear apart. Chili peppers, said my grandmother. Where did she even find them, said my grandfather. Why do we even have them, he said. They came with the spice rack, my grandmother said. I should throw them away. I suppose I should now. I should throw them away. I'll throw them away. I should have before, and that shouldn't be so. That should not have been so. It never should have been so. Of all things, chili peppers. Peppers, she puts peppers on chicken. On chicken, said my grandfather. On Shabbat. And for what? For what? For what, he wonders, for what is to hurt us? To hurt us, and why hurt us? Yes, why hurt us? Because we were nice enough to, because we were foolish enough to. Enough, my father said. No one is trying to hurt you, and you are being unkind. I am not trying to take your son away from you, my mother interjected. Excuse me? I am saying, please do not worry, my mother said. I am not trying to take Judah away from you. Please do not worry. I am not trying to take Judah away from you, said my grandfather. If not to take him away, then what are you trying to do with him? Said my grandfather. And why should you tell us not to worry about a thing about which we have therefore heretofore expressed no worry, if not precisely because we should worry? If not because you say to us, don't worry, you are making a threat, a veiled threat, true, but a threat nonetheless. And that threat is exactly what you say it isn't. which is to say that it is nothing other than a threat to take Judah away from us. And I have lost my antecedent. I have lost my own antecedent lady, my young lady, but I have not lost my mind. I have not lost my mind, not mine. And what it is that I mean to ask you is, why else, when we have expressed no worry about Judah being taken away by you, would you say such a thing as you have said about not trying and don't worry? If not to suggest that we should, in fact, worry and that you are trying. Why say it that way when it could be much more easily expressed if you just spoke the one word over and over very quickly so it sounded like worry, worry, worry? Why not just be forthright and say to us, worry? And why aren't you trying to take Judah away? My grandmother said, he's not good enough to take away. You're looking for someone smarter, maybe someone handsomer. As if you even could take him away. You should be so lucky. You should be so lucky. You should be so lucky. She should be so lucky. Yes, she should be so lucky. What is it you sound like? My father said. Robots, my father said. Yes, she should be so lucky. Yes, she should be so lucky. No, she should not be so lucky, or else she would be very lucky, which is not a thing I would want, given what so much of her luck would mean for us. We would be unlucky then. You will not be so lucky with our son. A pair of still robots clucking, my father said. Should she be so lucky? We should be unlucky is the thrust of the matter. Luck for she is no luck for we is the thrust. That is the thrust. I want you to be my wife, my dad whispered to my mother. When? My mother said. Her luck would be our tragedy is the real thrust. A tragic thrust for us, not her. No, not tragic for her, but lucky. Lucky for her, that thrust. Next Saturday night, my father said. The worst of luck is what we should be wishing her. You are drunk with defiance, my mother told my father. The worst of luck is what we are wishing her. Then a year from next Saturday, so you know I'm sincere, said my father. In the meantime, live with me. The thrust should be so lucky. I will, my mother said, and I will. My parents rose from their chairs. My father bowed and my mother curtsied. My father set his right hand on my mother's waist. My mother set her left hand on my father's shoulder. My father clasped her right hand into his left. With her left, my mother clasped his right one back, and the dancing began. At first they did a mid-tempo waltz, one step for every thrust, clucked, and two for every three luckies. They dipped and spun away past the table. The musicians, insulted, launched into a furious cha-cha, and my parents furiously cha-cha'd. They cha-cha'd in the living room, and they cha-cha'd in the foyer. But no matter how far away from the stage they went, the clucking grew louder and faster, but it could deafen them. They cha-cha'd before it could deafen them. They cha-cha'd out the door. On the stoop, the night was quiet. And in the quiet on the stoop, they did a box step. And while they box stepped in the night, they told stories. In 53 weeks and a day, they would marry.